Before we get off with this episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast, I would like to give two notes. First of all, my voice might seem a bit off, and that's because I was struggling with a cold and a sore throat because of that, so my voice is a bit off during the episode. And second of all, the names of Dendermonde and Herentals, they confused us a couple of times during this podcast, so they might be wrong a couple of times, but nothing to worry about. Anyway, enjoy the episode. Hello everyone and a Merry Christmas. Thank you for joining me on Christmas Day or perhaps on Boxing Day, depends when you're listening to this podcast. But anyway, thank you for joining me. With me here today to talk about cyclocross is Issam.
Hey everybody.
We'll be taking a look ahead at the Superprestige in Heusden Zolder, which takes place this Saturday on Boxing Day, and then the Worldcup, which takes place in Dendermonde this Sunday. Let's first start off with the Superprestige in Heusden Zolder. If you remember back, Heusden Zolder used to be a World Cup race, and this year they are in the Superprestige, probably because they couldn't pay the fee to become part of that World Cup. But anyway, good to see them on the calendar. They still have the same parcours as they used to have at the racetrack there in Heusden Zolder. A bit of a fast parcours. And for the men's race, we actually have Van der Poel, Van Aert and Pickock at the start line. What do you expect of these three guys? Do you think we'll see a battle here between these three, or you think that because the slightly faster parcours, maybe someone like Van Toornout and Zweek or Iserbyt could stay with them for a bit longer than we saw in Herentals?
Well, I definitely think that it will be a little bit closer packed than the last races that we had, because Zolder is normally a parcours where even if it's raining, it would be a little bit easier than what we had, for example, in the races that were passed in both Namur and of course and the race in Herentals. So I expect to be that the other guys will be a little bit closer than they were in Herentals, for example. But I definitely see that there will be a battle going up. I think Pickock is going to be the one with the freshest legs, because he did his race in Essen, and then from that point he's just focusing on the weekend, while Van der Poel and both Van Aert were racing in Herentals. So yeah, that makes it a little bit harder for them to go into this weekend.
It's already the 7th round of the Superprestige, and Iserbyt leads over Toon Aerts by 4 points. Toon Aerts, of course, is injured, as we said in the podcast of Herentals, so I don't know what we can expect from him. But for Iserbyt, it will be crucial to end in front of Toon Aerts, because otherwise if he does end in front of Toon Aerts, there's really not much chances for Toon Aerts to even come close to the victory here, because if you look at the point standings, it's 15 points for the winner and then 14, 13, and it just continues to the top 15. And it means that Toon Aerts really needs to end at least 2 places in front of Iserbyt if he wants to have a shot here. I do think that the parcours here in Zolder is a bit of a underrated one. It looks easier on TV because there's quite a lot of tarmac in it, but in the sections that aren't tarmac, there's quite some elevation which you don't necessarily see on TV, and I think that could potentially benefit someone like Aert. We know he loves a bit of climbing, and there were signs that things were getting better for him in Herentals when he was able to beat Iserbyt. What do you think for the battle of the Superprestige between these two guys?
The battle is going to be interesting. Of course, we have to see how Toon Aerts is going to recover from everything that he had. It was very, you could see that they're both pretty equal at this moment. So they're pretty close. I think also for the classification of the Superprestige, it's only 4 points separating the two of them, and with only 2 races to go, for both guys it's very important to make those points count. And I think for Toon Aerts, if he was 100%, this race would benefit him more than Iserbyt, but now it will be a little bit harder because we know that he's not 100%. So it's really speculating on how he's. I think this whole classification will depend on Toon Aerts, how he will perform in Zolder.
Well, he isn't 100%, but Iserbyt himself had an interview and he said he wasn't 100% either, and that's not a choice he made. He just said, I'm not as good as I was a couple of weeks ago, and I will try and work hard to try and get back to that top form. So maybe there is some tiredness kicking in, and then with all these races around the corner it could hamper him. But then that leaves me to the point what I expect, and that's a battle within a battle. I expect Pidcock, Van Aert, Van der Poel to battle at the front, where ultimately Van der Poel will probably be the strongest, especially on the parcours like Zolder. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he won the last 3 editions here.
Yeah, true. He won the last 3 editions in Zolder, and then the 4th edition was for Wout van Aert. I think both actually like this parcours, but for Van der Poel, it's gonna be a little bit more special, I guess.
Van Aert, of course, took his first world title here in 2016 when he beat Lars van der Haar and Kevin Pauls to the title. So I think it will also give him a bit of a mental boost. But I think you will have these 3 guys at the front, or at least being clearly the best, as we saw in Namur, with then Pidcock being the 3rd guy. And behind that, maybe for a while they'll be there. The guys of Van Toornhout, Isebeet, Aert, perhaps Zweek, and maybe a surprising name. But I think those will be the guys there. But ultimately, these 3 will come to the front. And behind that, you will definitely see a battle with Isebeet and Aert for the classification. And then Van Toornhout, I think, maybe if he feels he can't follow Pidcock, Van Aert and Van der Poel, I think he might sit back a bit and not go too deep, because the day after that there's a race which is definitely more important to him, the World Cup in Dendermonde.
Yeah, for him, if it doesn't go the way he wants it to go in the beginning of the race, we could see him already thinking about Sunday, and that's definitely the good mentality to go in, because at this moment in the Superprestige he has nothing to gain or to lose actually. I think he's now 3rd at this moment, so he might lose out on that 3rd place spot because Laurens Zweek and Van der Haar are very close behind. But normally Van Toornhout would finish ahead of those 2 guys. It's interesting to see how Zweek will go in Zolder, because it's normally a race that suits him, and so far Zweek has been a little bit disappointed in my opinion. But Van Toornhout is definitely going to race in his mind, okay, I have this World Cup that I have to defend the day after.
I think so as well, but for Zweek, I mean, in Essen, things did look a bit better. And then he had that puncture, and I think Zolder is a perfect parcours for him to maybe get that confidence that he got from Essen and turn it into some results. And I wouldn't be surprised if he can get a top 5 here and maybe climb into that 3rd place in the Superprestige. But in the end, I don't think Van Toornhout will really care about that 3rd place in the Superprestige if he can fight for the win in the World Cup.
Yeah, definitely. He's not. I don't think he's going to throw away his chances in the Superprestige for a podium. But if it doesn't go his way, for example, like what we have seen in Herentals with Van der Poel when he had the puncture, he gave up on that 1st place and was happy with 2nd. So I think that is a scenario that can happen to Van Toornhout as well. And for Zweek at this moment, I think he's just willing to have a better result than he had. It looked a little bit better as well in the last race in Herentals, so let's hope that he can get that momentum up in Zolder.
Then for the women's race here in Zolder, we are seeing a great battle in the general classification of the Superprestige. Lucinda Brand leads, but Alvarado is trailing by only 2 points. And both of them are starting. Of the big riders of the last couple of weeks, only Honsinger and Vos aren't starting. At least that's what we know. Maybe there will be some others, but at least from the riders that you expect to be close to the top 5, these are the ones that are not starting. But Brandt, Alvarado, Betsema, I think all these 3 are starting, and I think once again these 3 will be competing for the win, especially because Annemarie Worst is still not racing. She's taking a bit of time off the bike because she's overtrained.
Yeah, and for the classification, especially, it's only 2 points separating Brandt and Alvarado, and Alvarado is 2 points behind. So that's definitely something to watch. I think though that especially for this race, Brandt will be having a little bit of an edge on Alvarado, especially on those power sections. The technique will be there, but not that much as it was in Herentals. So I think for Brandt, definitely a race to look forward to.
I think so as well. Brandt won here last season for a reason, and that's that she likes these type of parcourses, and it should be something for her. But I also think that Alvarado will be able to put up a challenge, and potentially Betsema as well, though I think this isn't the perfect parcours for Betsema. But I think it will definitely be close, especially because they're racing a double weekend, and usually the race on the Saturday is then always a bit with the race of Sunday in the back of your head. So I think that will go up here as well, and they might think, oh yeah, let's not go too deep in the beginning. So there'll be a relatively slow start, and then during the race they'll gradually pick up the pace, and the last 15 minutes will of course be full out, and the strongest will probably win, but it gives some tactical aspect, and it will potentially give some opportunities for some other riders to overperform because they can stay with the leading group in the beginning of the race a bit longer than they usually can.
Yeah, I think that's, it will give a lot of hope to the guys that are a little bit behind, because I think they will be easy in the first 1-2 laps to stay with the front runners, and then we will see that the condition, the physique will play a big role, and the big riders will eventually separate themselves from the rest. It would just be interesting to see what the rain will do with the parcours, to be honest, if it's going to be very technical or not in, for example, the descent which you have at the end of the race, at the end of the lap, and several other parts which are pretty crucial in a way. So that will be interesting to see, and if the climbs will be running or cycling in a way.
I definitely think those downhills have some potential to become slippery and very tricky, but for the other parts of the parcours, it's not like what we are going to see in Dendermonde, which we'll come to a bit later, that there's a lot of potential to absolutely turn into a lot of mud, like we've seen in other places like Herentals. There's not really of those grass fields that can really easily turn into some serious thick mud or thin slippery mud. It's at a auto parcours, and it's every function is there that even if it rains, that these cars can still be able to run. So the water easily disappears, which means that there is less water on the track of the cyclocross, which also means that there's less potential for the parcours to be broken and turn into mud, just like we saw in the World Championships when they were there. It had been raining quite a lot, but also then it wasn't super muddy.
Yeah, true. There's a lot of drainage going on there, and you don't want to have a car going off the track and aquaplaning on the grass, so they have worked on that. For cyclocross, however, it's a little bit less good, because we won't see those puddles of water going up there. It will be a little bit muddy, but don't expect too much, and especially not compared to Herentals. But yeah, indeed, Dendermonde is something we can look up to for a little bit more Herentals edition.
But like the water here, it will probably go into the ground, which is obvious. That happens with water, and then you get this really sucking ground that you're riding through, that you have the feeling if you're riding there that your wheels are being sucked into the ground. It makes it super hard, and that could benefit Brand, because Brand looks to have the most power. Although I don't want to underestimate Alvarado, because on the climbs, Alvarado, I've seen her put down some serious power numbers as well.
Yeah, true, and I think last year Alvarado was second behind Brand, and I think it was a sprint. I'm not sure. It was a sprint between Vorst and Alvarado, I think. And Brandt was alone. No, it was a sprint actually against Alvarado and Brandt. Those two were fighting for victory. Looking back at last year, you can say that they are very close to each other, and that it will be a very good race and entertaining race to watch for the women's.
To not make this podcast too long, let's make some podium predictions here for the men's and the women's race in Heusden Zolder. For the men's race, I'll go first. I think Van der Poel will win in front of Van Aert and Pickock. And if you want to go for the same one, be my guest, because it is the obvious podium.
It seems to me like the obvious podium. I think though that Pickock will be there with fresh legs. I give him the benefit of the second place. I think that Van der Poel will win. I think Pidcock second, and then Van Aert third.
And then for the women's race, you can go first. What do you expect?
I think Alvarado will have the momentum, so I will say Alvarado, and then probably a battle for second with Brandt and Betsema. I think then Brandt second and Betsema third.
I'll go with actually Brandt winning in front of Alvarado and Denise Betsema. Then on Sunday, there's the third round of the UCI World Cup, which is being held in Dendermonde, a brand new parcours. It replaces the original place of Wachtenbeke, which got cancelled, but not for COVID. It was something logistical reasons that they decided to move it. Dendermonde, I saw some pictures of the parcours. If you look at the map, it doesn't look too promising. There's quite some straights, but also quite some technical sections. A bit of elevation, not too much, but it's in a field. And with the current forecast of rain, we already mentioned it briefly, there's a lot of potential for this to turn in an absolute mudfest.
Yeah, like we said already in the Zolder part, this has everything to become a little bit like Herentals in terms of the mud, and that's very good to see. I think no mud, no glory, and definitely for this race, which is a new race. I don't know much about it other than what has been said about it, that it has all the potential to be a very muddy race.
And I think the parkour, it's really well built. They don't have a lot of possibilities in terms of elevation, but they did use the elevation to a maximum. There's some Swiss type of descents. I'm seeing a picture here now where they first go up the hill, then they go down. It's first off camber, then off camber downhill, and then on the middle of the hill it turns into an off camber, and then there's a U-turn, and then they get down off the hill. So I really like that they are taking absolutely maximum advantage of what they have. In terms of start field here, I think we're expecting the almost exact same field in the men's race of Zolder to start in Dendermonde as well. So I guess we don't really need to go into all the riders once again, because we can expect the same three guys at the front, potentially with Van Toornhout, the leader of the standings, there as well to compete.
I think Van Toornhout will definitely be up there. I think his performance in Herentals showed that he is in very good shape. He is not on the level of the two that were in front of him. So, but I expect him to go a little bit easier in Zolder. So maybe he got then enough to go a little bit longer with those guys in front.
Also, don't forget that his team manager, Jurgen Mettepenning, is actually the organizer of this race as well. So that will give some extra motivation. And Jurgen Mettepenning has also said, I am not accepting the dominance of Van Aert and Van der Poel and potentially Pickock, even though he isn't mentioned. We will do everything we can to have one of our three guys being able to put them between them. So I think especially Van Toornhout will be super motivated to perform here. And if it's a muddy race, I think that does benefit him. Although I do think that in the same scale, it benefits Pickock and Van Aert as well. These are the guys that like the mud, but I don't think Van der Poel is bad in the mud either.
No, yeah, of course, Van der Poel gave this illusion that he's very bad in the mud, because most of his less good performances were in the mud, actually. And but we have to remember that a race like in Dubendorf, where we were thinking that it would benefit a little bit more Toon Aerts, was really a race where he showed that he can do everything. So his chances will go a little bit smaller, but I really think that also for him, it's not going to be that bad having a lot of mud.
I don't think it will be the end of the world for either of the riders that we're expecting to be at the front. And Pickock, he does really seem to like the mud, and I think that is really because Pickock is super strong in terms of power levels that he's putting out, and I think Pickock will definitely be up there. But I just have the feeling that he is just slightly below the level of Van Aert and Van der Poel. Maybe it's just 1 or 2%, but just have the feeling these two are just a little bit better. And that has also to do with the fact that Pickock is, of course, a bit younger. He still has time to grow, to become maybe a bit more muscled, like we saw Van Aert do at some point as well. Van der Poel also turned into this wide guy at some point, and I think that's maybe just a little bit that Pickock is missing at the moment.
Yeah, true. I have to say that Pickock is really almost everything. He's on the level of those two, especially in the technical parts and the climbing. I think in power output, he misses a little bit, I think, and that's not something very weird, because also there is an age difference, there is a experience difference as well, so it's not all that weird. But I think what helps Pickock compared to the others is especially his weight. He's not the heaviest of the three, and if you have the weight and the watts, and you can you can make your watts a little bit bigger than they are already. That will benefit, and especially in cyclocross with those hills, that can benefit him. But I think that will come with time.
Do you think Van Toornout will still retain his lead in the World Cup after this round?
Well, I mean, his lead is only 7 points, and I think if you win, you get 40 points, and if you're second, you get 30 points actually. So it's 10 points difference. I don't think that Van Aert will win. So then at that point, I think Van Toornout will keep his lead.
I think it will definitely be close, because I think Van Aert has a shot for the win here, especially if it's muddy, and potentially this has the potential to become a cross with quite some running, and Van Aert runs super fast. Also, if you check on his Strava, he did some serious running trainings as well with some serious kilometer times as well. So I think it will definitely be close. And if he ends second, then fourth place isn't actually enough for Van Toornout, because then he will be trailing by 1 point. So that means that he would need to end third, beating Pickock, which can happen, but Pickock can also beat Van Aert, and then 6th place or 7th place is already enough for Van Toornout to retain his lead. So I think it will definitely be close, but also for Van der Poel, he still has a shot at winning the World Cup if he rides all of them, and if he then wins all of them, he still wins the World Cup. So it will definitely be interesting, and I think this might be the best shot to beat Van der Poel, and that's what Van Aert or Van Toornout need to do if they want to at least not to have to counter Van der Poel as a real dangerous guy for the overall.
Yes, I think that, for both it will be beneficial if Van der Poel is not winning this next Manche. I don't know if Van der Poel is going to do all 5 World Cup races, or the 2 remainders after Dendermonde. So the one in Heusden and in Overijse. And we still have to see if both go through. I think they will. But, for Van Toornout and for Van Aert, their main goal is to be in front of each other. So they're really going to... I think you're going to see a race in a race, because I think if Van Toornout would go and you have Van Aert and Van der Poel with each other, looking at each other with Pickock as well, I think that Van Toornout can benefit from that rivalry in a way. But I don't think that will happen in the World Cups, because Van Aert actually also has to look at Van Toornout because of the classifications.
I think we'll be in for a very open and probably exciting race here.
Yeah, definitely.
Then let's take a look ahead at the women's race. It is Lucinda Brandt who leads the classification there with 28 points over Alvarado. That's a lot. That's really a lot. And if you look at the starting field compared to what we had in Heusden Zolder, there's some new names coming to the start line. Clara Honsinger, number 2 in Namur, is starting. Marianne Vos is also starting. And I think Vos and Pietersen, I'm not exactly sure if they will be starting in Heusden Zolder, but they will for sure be starting here in the race of Dendermonde. What do you expect here? More of the same, Brandt, Alvarado, Betsema, or do you think that Vos, Honsinger, Pietersen and Vos will be able to challenge?
I think they will be closer. If they will challenge, that really depends on how the race will go. But I think they will be closer, especially because if they're not going to do Zolder, I think for Honsinger we know for sure, but I'm not, it's really, we still didn't see the start list of Zolder, so it's really hard to say. But if you don't do Zolder and you come in Dendermonde and it's going to be a hard race, well, the legs will definitely have their saying in what you did the day before. So I think we can have a surprise on the podium.
I think so as well, and the surprise there could be Vos for me. Her results have been a bit on and off, but on the other hand, she's 4th in the standings here, really impressive. And she said last time in Namur, the jersey gave her wings. She could see it at the start and then that crash, and still ending 5th then. I think she could be potentially in, especially if it's muddy, for a surprise podium like she got in Tabor. So is it really a surprise? Don't know. Or she ended 4th in Tabor actually, just missing out on the podium. But would it be a surprise? Not a complete one, but it will still be a small surprise. And I think for the 3rd place it could be open, because in this time of the season you'll definitely see the result of riders just going up and down from race to race, because there's so many. At some point they will have a bad day, or they'll be a bit tired from the race the day before, and it's nothing to blame them for.
No, it's definitely not something to blame them for. It's very busy days, and especially for the races that are coming up. Everybody has his own program to run. Everybody has his own classification that's important for him or her. So it's definitely not going to be weird to see an off day for one of the girls or the men's categories. So, but I definitely think that with the midweek races that we had in Herentals and Essen, that it's already a very difficult week, and then with the double header as well, that makes it just a little hard. And I think especially for the girls that did one midweek race and both in the weekend, they will feel it on Sunday.
Yeah, and that might need me to reconsider my point on Vas, because she's ridden almost everything since she came back from a short training camp in Spain, and I think it might be a bit much, because if she's starting Heusden Zolder and Dendermonde, I think it might be a bit much. But if she's not starting Zolder, I would give her a better chance here, because I think Zolder will be a tough race and Dendermonde will be even tougher. So 2 tough races in a weekend. It's not for all, and especially for the young girls, and also the same goes for the under 23 in the men's category, by the way. But it's not for all, and especially these young ones, they often struggle more with 2 hard races in one weekend.
Yeah, true, and that's what I mean with a surprise. It's such a race is a race that is on a very difficult position, especially physically, and also mentally, because at some point you will be like, oh, another race, and some really cannot handle so many races in 1 week. There's where you're gonna see a lot of surprises. So let's hope that Dendermonde is gonna be a surprise.
Well, I think we can then now make some predictions for the race in Dendermonde. What do you expect in the men's race for the podium?
I think that Pickock will be the freshest out of the 3. I will go for the Brit, and I will say that Pickock wins in Dendermonde. And then maybe Van Aert second and Van der Poel third.
I was actually thinking about Van Aert winning here in front of Van der Poel, and then in third place actually Michael van Toornout. I don't know, I have the feeling Pidcock, maybe something will just go wrong here in this race, but on the other hand I also had that feeling in Gavere and it didn't happen. So I could be wrong, but that's just what I feel here. Then for the women's race, I would like to go with Alvarado in front of Brandt and Denise Betsema. Once again, actually.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to say, because it's... I think, especially if there is going to be a little bit of... if there are going to be a lot of corners and there is going to be a running section, then I would say that will benefit Alvarado. So then I'm also going to say that Alvarado wins then in Dendermonde, and then maybe Betsema second and Brandt third. Or let's say Hongsner then in third.
Well, that would at least make the classification a bit more interesting, because Brandt 28 points, she would lose a chunk of her lead and have her lead down to 10 points, and it could make for some interesting remainder of the races. But we'll definitely make some podcasts about it, and we'll come back to our predictions after the races. Tomorrow on Boxing Day, there's already a new podcast for you. It's busy times for us. We'll have Zolder, the race review, coming online then. And the day after that, we'll be back with another podcast about the World Cup in Dendermonde. Issam, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for hosting, man.
And then I'll round off this episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast by telling you guys to head to cyclocross.social.com to check where you can watch both races, and also leave a rating if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, and share it with your friends if you're listening to it anywhere else. Everybody, thank you for listening, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.